With the launch of STS-127 and its crew of 7 astronauts, Space Shuttle Endeavour will embark on a mission to the International Space Station that will include 5 spacewalks and complex maneuvers using 3 robotic arms. This 29th mission to the space station is a banner flight, as space agencies from 5 ISS partners will have representatives on the station when the shuttle arrives. Once Endeavour docks to ISS, 6 Americans and a second Canadian will join this truly international crew. And for the first time in history, 13 humans will live and work on the International Space Station at the same time. The crew of Endeavour includes 3 experienced astronauts and 4 first-time space travelers. Mark Polanski, a former Air Force test pilot and NASA engineer, will be making his 3rd trip aboard the shuttle as he leads the crew of STS-127. He first flew as the pilot of STS-98 in 2001, and then as the commander of STS-116 in 2006. Marine Lieutenant Colonel Doug Hurley will be making his first voyage into space as the pilot of Endeavour. Hurley will be responsible for orbiter systems operations, station robotic arm operations, and will fly the shuttle as it undocks from the station near the end of the mission. Navy Commander Chris Cassidy will serve as Mission Specialist 1. A former Navy SEAL, Cassidy will make 3 spacewalks during the mission, performing a variety of assembly tasks outside the orbiting complex. Veteran astronaut Julie Payette is making her 2nd journey into space aboard Endeavour as Mission Specialist 2. Payette, who was the first Canadian to board the ISS in 1999, will operate the station's Canadarm2 during STS-127. Mission Specialist 3 is Tom Marshburn. Before he was selected as an astronaut, he served as a lead flight surgeon for shuttle and station crews. Marshburn will step outside for 3 spacewalks during this mission. Mission Specialist 4 is veteran astronaut Dave Wolf. Wolf has more prior spaceflight experience than the rest of his crewmates combined. He first flew on STS-58 in 1993 and then served a 4-month tour on the Russian space station Mir in 1997. This will be his 4th spaceflight. Army Colonel Tim Copra will accompany the STS-127 crew to the station. Copra is making his first trip into space and will remain on the station as an Expedition 20 flight engineer after Endeavour departs. Endeavour will bring home current ISS flight engineer Koichi Wakata, who represents the Japanese Space Agency. STS-127 will deliver the final elements of the Japanese laboratory complex Kibo, the largest laboratory on ISS. Kibo's main component, the pressurized module, was delivered and installed on the station last year during the STS-124 mission.
We are the last mission that is taking up Japanese hardware on a space shuttle. We've got 5 spacewalks during the course of our dock time up there, and we're going to go ahead and take what we call the Japanese Exposed Facility. We've nicknamed the JEF, and we're going to attach that on our first full day once we're docked on orbit during our first EVA. We're going to take up another Japanese element called the Japanese Logistics Element. We call it Jelly, and we're going to attach that to the JEF, and that's going to have 3 Japanese payloads that we're eventually going to transfer to the JEF and leave it behind.
The Japanese Exposed Facility, the JEF, is an external platform that can hold up to 9 experiment payloads at a time outside Kibo. Payloads will be exchanged or retrieved through Kibo's scientific airlock using the lab's small robotic arm.
I've heard it described as like the front porch for the GEM, the Japanese Experiment Module. And obviously it's more than that, but it looks similar to that. It's a large platform that attaches to the end of that module. And what it could be used for and will be used for is to attach exposed payloads, exposed meaning exposed to space, and monitor those while it's on orbit.
All of the components delivered by the STS-127 crew will be installed in a highly choreographed dance between the spacewalking astronauts and the robot arm operators inside. The robotic operations will involve the shuttle arm, the station arm, and for the first time, the Japanese small arm attached to Kibo.
Based on the ISS configuration these days, just because we have Columbus and GEM out towards what would be the front of the station where we dock, the arms are fairly constrained as to where they can move in their trajectories. So more times than not these days, you have to do some sort of a handoff between the two arms to get something out of the shuttle payload bay.
The Japanese Experiment Logistics Module, or JELLY, is the moving van from which the Japanese arm will retrieve payloads for storage on the front porch of Kibo. The JELLY will carry 3 payloads during the STS-127 mission. As the ISS nears the final phase of construction, the STS-127 crew will also outfit the station for continued operations after the shuttle's retirement.
We will be putting several large, we call them ORU, orbital replacement units, large boxes of equipment to be spares for future use outside of the space station. We will be changing the batteries on the P6 solar array, 6 large batteries that each weigh around 300, 350 pounds, the size of small refrigerators.
During Endeavour's time on orbit, STS-127 will mark several milestones for the astronauts and for the station. When the STS-127 crew arrives, they will be greeted by the station's full complement of 6 full-time residents. This will be the first time that 13 people have been aboard station at the same time, and will set a record for the largest number of humans in space on the same vehicle at the same time. It will also mark the first time that 2 Canadians will be on orbit at the same time, as Canadian shuttle astronaut Julie Payette joins Expedition 20 flight engineer Bob Thirsk of the Canadian Space Agency, who will already be on the station when Payette arrives.
We had our first astronaut to go on board the space shuttle in 1984. And now we are going to have our first Canadian astronaut that will stay for a long period of time on board the space station. Our first long-duration astronaut, Bob Thirsk, who will stay for 6 months. That will be historical.
The first of the mission's 5 spacewalks will be performed on Flight Day 4, as Wolf and Copra work with the crew inside to prepare to install the Japanese experiment module exposed facility.
The only way to do this maneuver is to have Canadarm2, the station arm, pick out the platform from the cargo bay, lift it up, push it to the side.
Then we have to walk off the station arm, which means we have to grapple the mobile base. The base the base moves down the truss, and then Mark and Julie hand the exposed facility back to Koichi and I with the station arm, and then we install it on the GEM.
Before wrapping up the first spacewalk, Wolf and Copra will attempt to deploy critical spare parts platforms on the station's truss. The platforms failed to deploy properly during STS-119 in March, and will be needed when the STS-129 crew delivers additional spare parts to ISS later this year. Flight Day 5 is filled with more robotics, this time featuring the ICC VLD, the Vertical Cargo Carrier, or VIC. The VIC will be unberthed and handed off from the shuttle arm to the big arm on station in preparation for the second spacewalk. The following day, Flight Day 6, Wolf and Marshburn will step outside for EVA-2 as they unload ISS spare parts from the VIC. These parts include 3 orbital replacement units, or ORUs. The astronauts will move these pieces of equipment from the cargo carrier to an external stowage platform in case they are needed at some point in the future. Meanwhile, inside the shuttle and station, things will be just as busy for the robotic arm operators, as all 3 of the robotic arms will be in use, sometimes all at the same time.
For the first 2 spacewalks, I'll be the IV crew member inside the vehicle, kind of coordinating the procedures. And then the EVAs 3, 4, and 5, I'll be outside as one of the EV crew members.
Flight Day 7 calls for more robotic multitasking. The JELLY logistics module will be